take a deep breath. We have a lot of romance to get through. One Week Girlfriend, a new adult book by Monica Murphy. And no, contrary to what the cover would lead you to believe, it's not the whimsical story of two blow-up dolls who fall in love. I have to admit I read this book entirely on the strength of that title. I mean, come on, how can you resist? Because you know it's going to be the plot where the guy and the girl have to pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend for a week for whatever reason, but then magically it turns into something else. See, the title really does say it all because that is the book. It's not the greatest adaptation of the specific plot that I've ever read, but I'm curious enough to see what happens in book 2. Easy by Tamara Weber. This is new adult. Tamara Weber is no J. Lynn, but this book will still probably get you right in the feels, and you'll want to move on to the second, which I think comes out in May. Easy's plotline of unknown identity is vastly transparent from the get-go and not the height of uniqueness, but the characterization is there, and when it comes down to it, characters will trump plot for me every single time. I do have issues with his hair on the cover. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I alone in my swoopy hair hatred? Speaking of J. Lynn, I read Frigid, one of her new adult books from last year. Seriously, how fast does this lady write? Anyway, it's the classic story of two longtime best friends who have never gotten together because he's a major player, and he's also always had her up on a pedestal of being too good for him, and then they get snowed in together. Okay, so not her most original or best plotted story, but still a fun, steamy read. Can't complain. The new adult book, The Coincidence of Callie and Caden by Jessica Sorensen. This book deals with some super dark topics, so be prepared, but overall I liked it. Labor Day by Joyce Maynard. I read this book for book club, and I hated it for almost all of it, with a passionate hate, which kind of excited me because I so rarely truly hate a book. Usually I settle for a mild meh of dislike. It did redeem itself slightly in the last 10%, enough for me to get to a disgruntled dislike. It's the story of a love affair between a divorcee and an escaped convict as told through the narration of her 10-year-old son. Look, I mean, the book is certainly unique, but I really refuse to be one of those people who equates novelty with enjoyment. It was just kind of uncomfortable. There is a movie to this book, and if they make me watch it in book club, I might cry. Not with the movie, but at the fact I have to watch it, right? Get it? Okay, moving on. Nice Girls Don't Live Forever by Molly Harper, the third book in the Paranormal Jane Jameson series. This is going to seem weird, but these books are starting to remind me of an old-timey short story collection about life in a small town. Like Penrod, if you've ever read that. Don't get me wrong, that's not a bad thing per se. I enjoyed this book. It was a fun little read, but it was more relaxing than suspenseful. Sometimes it seems that miniseries destined to be practically endless lose somewhat of a sense of urgency, you know? It's almost as if the author is fishing around for ways to stretch the story/money train out as long as possible. That's part of the reason I like series with a finite beginning and end. You don't get stuck in ad nauseum mode. Love Irresistibly by Julie James, the fourth book in the contemporary romance series called FBI/US Attorney, which really is one of the most awkward series names I've ever seen. I didn't dislike this book, but perhaps it was not highly relatable for me right now. Still, it was a pleasant and a nice way to while away a sleepless night. The first two books in this series do remain my favorites. Lord of Ice, the third book in the historical romance series Knights Miscellany by Galen Foley. I have only really one thing to say about this book. Before I started reading romance, this is what I thought all romance novels were like. That is not a compliment. A Lady Persuasion by Tessa Dare, the third book in the Wanton Dairy Maid historical romance series. I don't know why I keep torturing myself, perhaps because the first book in the series was so good, but each subsequent book has just devolved. In this one, the jilted fiancé from the last book marries his former fiancé's husband's sister, who is a rather insipid and annoying character who is gung-ho on reforming poor Sir Toby. It was odd. Destined to Last, the third book in the historical romance Providence series by Alyssa Johnson. I'm torn. On one hand, Alyssa Johnson is really good at writing dialogue. On the other hand, the premise of these books is beyond ridiculous, and the plots barely hold together. Passed a pleasant evening, so gonna say I liked it. Gabriels Inferno by Sylvain Reynard. It's supposed to be a sort of retelling of the story of Dante and Beatrice set in modern times, with a professor and a naive graduate student as stand-ins for the aforementioned. A couple of things here. One, way overuse of parentheses. Two, while the writing got better as it went along, it started off very weak. Three, the female character wasn't altogether plausible for me. No Good Duke Goes Unpunished, the third book in the Rules of Scoundrels historical romance series by Sarah McLean. In this, the woman the Killer Duke was accused of killing so many years before shows up, well, not dead, and the Killer Duke plans his revenge. Melodrama. Oh, who am I kidding? I'm a sucker for some self-sacrificial melodrama. It's one of my greatest weaknesses. But don't say I didn't warn you. Okay, how long did that take us? Read any good romance books lately?